Shabbat Shalom, and this is 10 minutes of Torah. Not 100 degrees in the shade, as it's seemed all week, and not 6 degrees of separation, as it seems every Jew has to another, but 10 minutes of Torah. Well, here I am once again in my outdoor studio, and I always enjoy doing 10 minutes of Torah outside because the combination of nature and Torah just seems to me something that speaks to our souls. It really does. And indeed, the people of Israel are, of course, in the desert right now in the Torah. And so nature, desert, it combines very nicely, and I think a good place to speak of Torah. Well, Korach is this week's Torah portion. And it continues a series of rebellions against Moses, Aaron, God. And it is the most serious of all of the rebellions. Why is it the most serious? First of all, last week it sounded quite serious. 10 of the 12 scouts spoke against God and Moses and the land of Israel in terms of conquering it. And because of that, they're now going to wander 40 years in the desert. Well, that sounds pretty serious, but this one is more so. Because Korach is indeed less than 6 degrees of separation from Moses and Aaron. Korach is their cousin. And Korach's challenge is to say, like we would say as children, Moses, who died and made you king? You're not the boss of me. You know, all those children kind of things. They say it's almost like that's what Korach is saying. And how does he phrase that? First of all, it's not just Korach. It's Korach and members, leaders of the tribe of Ruvain. And that is important because Ruvain is the firstborn of all of Jacob's sons. And while Ruvain is long gone in terms of he is no longer alive, it is Ruvain's descendants who join with Korach to rebel against Moses. So you've got the Levites from Korach's family. That's the religious rebellion. And you've got the leaders from the tribe of Ruvain. That's sort of a civil rebellion, if you will. And they're a very serious combination for the two of them. What do they say? Well, Korach says, following to Moses and Aaron, Moses and Aaron, you have gone too far, for all the community are holy. All of them. The Lord is in their midst. Why do you raise yourself above the Lord's congregation, above, in other words, everyone else? Now, that's quite a challenge to Moses and Aaron. Everyone is indeed holy. There's a lot to say about the way Korach phrases it, and that is for another time. But it's interesting, the rabbis center on the fact that Korach says they are holy. Something to think about. What does it mean that they are holy? Isn't that something we strive for, perhaps? But at any rate, Moses, of course, rejects their challenge. And he says to Korach and his followers, let's see who God favors. And so each of them take an offering, a fire pan offering of incense. And they say, Moses says, let's let God choose between us, Moses and his followers, and Korach's followers. Well, what happens is, of course, the offering of Moses is accepted, but the group with Korach is consumed by a heavenly fire and also swallowed up by the earth. So that's the end of the rebellion at that point. But the Torah portion concludes with a confirmation once again of the leadership of Moses and Aaron. The duties of the Kohanim reiterated, since this has been a challenge of Korach and Kohanim to others, Aaron. And as a matter of fact, even until this day, that separation of the people into Kohen, Levi, and Israelite still stands. It's a very long time, but that is really here mentioned as different parts of the people. So this Torah portion begins with a very unusual verse. And it's the verse I'd like to concentrate on this week. It says the following: Vayikach Korach ben Yitzar ben Kahat ben Levi Vidatan va'Aviram b'nei Eliav va'Avon ben Pelet b'nei Ruvain Vayakumu lifnei Moshe. Okay, so what does that mean? Korach, he took, or actually as it says here, he betook himself, along with Datan and Aviram, the sons of Eliav, and On, the son of Pelet, who were from the tribe of Ruvain, to rise up against Moses. Okay. So what we're told here is quite interesting, because the English kind of fudges it a bit. Korach betook himself. The Hebrew is Vayikach Korach. The Hebrew actually is not quite betook. It says, and Korach took. And the translators of the Torah have a major problem with this, because they want to ask, what is it that Korach took? So our Eitz Chaim Chumash says Korach betook himself. Well, that's who he took. He took himself. And the older Hertz Chumash, the one that most of us grew up on, and we actually used for many, many years at Bethel, the old Hertz Chumash says that Korach took men. The word men is not in the Hebrew, but what else could he take? Korach took men. And finally, the Torah portion that I study constantly, it's really an incredible Torah translation, rather, that I study regularly, the translation and commentary of Robert Alter, has a third translation of it. Alter says, Korach took up. So you've got betook himself, you've got took men, and you've got took up. Why do they have different translations of this? Because really what you have in the Hebrew is a verb without an object. What does that mean? It means that an action is about to take place, but something seems to be left out. And so the translation I would give is simply, in Korach took ... It doesn't tell us exactly what Korach took. Now, why does the Torah phrase it this way? After all, the Torah only gives us information we need. You know, these rebellions, it could have left them out. Why do we need to know about these rebellions? Obviously, there are good reasons to know about these rebellions. It talks about the balance of power. It talks about the dynamic between Moses and the people of Israel. It talks about challenges that even someone as great as Moses could have. So the rebellions are indeed very important, and this, as I said, is the most important of them, the most challenging of them. So in this case, it seems to me that, as is often in the Torah, words have been chosen to give us multiple meanings. Vayikach Korach took, betook himself, took men, took up. I prefer Korach took. And I think that the Torah wants to teach us something of great importance. It wants to teach us that there are different ways that people take things. Some try to influence others in immoral and dishonorable ways. Others in a lack of humility, thinking they're always right. We all know people like that. Of course, none of us are like that, but we know people who think they are always right. So that's what they are taking up, is their own ego, if you will. Another idea of taking is that causes which are not defensible in a civil society. We've been living through a significant period of time right now where people who you would think otherwise have wonderful values have taken up the cause of terrorists and murderers, that is Hamas, and somehow made it their cause. They are not defensible. You can't defend someone who supports a terrorist. They're terrorists, after all. It's a civil society we live in. So what do they have in common? Influencing people in immoral and dishonorable ways, a lack of humility, thinking they are always right, taking up causes that in a society such as ours are not defensible. The answer is they all have in mind that they are opposed to actually the common good. They're mostly thinking of themselves. And so, what we do is we take something. When we take something, nothing good comes of it. And that, it seems to me, is why we have this ambiguity at the beginning of the Torah portion. Korach took, however way you want to look at it, whatever his taking was something that was not in favor of the common good in people, but rather thinking of themselves. Well, I've gone over a bit in my time, my apologies, but nevertheless, this has still been 10 minutes of Torah, not 100 degrees of heat in the shade, and not 6 degrees of separation between us and all Jews, between Korach and Moses and Aaron, but 10 minutes of Torah. May we take it for the good. Shabbat Shalom.